Welcome back. This morning, Diakonos Solutions is with Jenny Gallo of Carrot Top Studio. And Jenny has, if you did not see our first interview, please watch. She talks about how she started designing stoles, and she graciously offered a tour of her studio. So we are here today on this installment with Jenny Gallo to see her studio, the tour of Carrot Top Studio. Welcome back, Jenny.
Thanks, Susan. It's great to be here.
So I see that you've got some fabrics behind you. How do you source your fabrics? Do you just head down to the local fabric store like the rest of us, or do you have special relationships with people? How do you get your fabrics?
All different ways. I love using quilting fabrics. They're really high quality, and I do have an online store that I source those at. But I travel as much as I can. In the first interview, we talked about that I'm a mother of 2 children, but I'm now an empty nester, and so we take off as much as we can. See God's great creation, and I do tend to stumble upon fabric stores in those situations. I've had some unique sources over the years, such as a group of Mennonite women that worked with with a fabric making group in the Congo. And they would work with those artisans and then bring those fabrics back to the United States where we are located. And I purchased those fabrics from them. It was just a wonderful fair trade kind of situation. And to be able to support one artist supporting another group of artists. And I enjoy working with vintage fabrics and repurposed fabrics. And those are the kinds of things that I always mention in the story that I tell about the stoles in the stole descriptions on the Carrot Top Studio website. And then, of course, there are the big box fabric stores like everybody else shops in too. But I kind of like to save that as a last resort.
Yeah. So can you give us a tour of the studio?
I would love to. I'm going to step out of the camera for just a second and I'll show you around. This is the space that we started our conversation in, and it's a space that I have conversations in frequently with myself. It's kind of a thinking zone, and you can see that I have a lot of storage solutions here too, and the fabric is stacked in that some of my fabrics are stacked in that tall skinny case. And you can see that I order things by the color wheel. Some people would call it rainbow order, but it's basically an artist color wheel, and that just helps me put my hands on the right thing when I need to. And let me circle around, see how this goes. This next area that's important to my work is my cutting table. And it's long and skinny because the work I tend to do is long and skinny. And underneath the cutting table, you'll see the gray bins, and that's where I throw scraps of fabric after I've cut what I needed. I'm kind of a waste not, want not kind of girl. Believe in frugality, and I'll use those fabric scraps as way down to the wee little bits for all different sorts of projects.
So can I ask, it looks like you even have your scraps sorted by color.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all about efficiency. There's so much work that I want to accomplish that, whatever can make the tasks at hand just keep rolling along. That's the way I work.
All right.
My father was in the Navy, and he was a very organized person, I think, because of that. And I think that has trickled down into my life.
Very inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. We are who we are. And next to the cutting table, it makes sense to have my ironing zone. And I have a commercial ironing press, but I use a traditional household iron also. But I can't use an ironing board the way most people use. It's just too small for my work. So I have this wonderful tabletop that I've converted into an ironing center, which It's just, I didn't have that in my last studio. So that's just a little joy in my life.
Wow.
Yeah. And then next up is the sewing center.
Oh
And you can
my.
see I've got color organization going on even with my spools of thread. And a lot of people have the, I think, misnotion that artists need to live in chaos for that artistic work to happen. And I believe the opposite. I believe that the structure allows then room for my creativity to flow. And this is where I sit and sew. And it outlooks a wonderful window where there are often deer or turkeys
Oh
struggling
wow.
by. And the sewing table is double wide because I do long and skinny things like we've talked about, and that way the fabric just flows right through the machine and not onto the table, not onto the floor.
Wow.
And this mannequin we call Stella, she helps me out. And this is my design wall, and it's very large. It's probably 6 feet tall by about 10 feet wide. And you can see a labyrinth stole on here. I'm going to go stand next to it. Let's see if I can get in camera. Here we are. Yeah, this is one of the labyrinth stole designs that's in process right now. Like we talked
Wow.
about, it's not a full labyrinth, it's just a hint of a labyrinth. You know, that's often a great way to tell a story. It's a story starter. In essence. And isn't this fabric just wonderful the way it gradates in color?
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And the fact
Yeah.
that it's in green so that, again, a pastor can wear it often.
Absolutely. Ordinary times so long. Yes.
I have a question about your design wall.
Mhm.
So is it like a cork board? Like, is it
It's in essence a bulletin board. It's insulation foam that's covered with flannel, so I can actually stick the fabric will stick to the flannel, but heavier things I pin up
so
also.
you have a
And
6 foot wide flannel board?
oh, it's just amazing. Yeah, it
All
really is
right.
essential to my work because often you'll think you know where something needs to be placed, but you actually need to see it happen. And sometimes you'll need to move it around. This is a tree that's in process, and you know, I might need to see how it looks down below, or I might need to see how it looks up high before I actually adhere it onto the fabric. And it also allows me to let this work rest for a while. Sometimes it's days or weeks that things are on the design wall. I kind of equate this to the same way. To be visionary, sometimes we need to have distance. Isn't that true in your ministry
Yeah.
also?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of my way of doing that. Yeah, the
Wow. I
design.
mean, I have a whiteboard, and I know I've got friends who have whiteboard envy, but flannel
Yeah.
board envy could be a thing now.
We're gonna start a trend,
Right?
right?
I
Right.
need a section that's a flannel
Yeah.
board for my, yeah, no, that's amazing.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
in the quilt world, and sewers. It's a thing.
It's a thing. Okay. So
Design
this is
boards.
just, all right. So we're just cross cultural. Okay, great.
Right, right.
All right. So you briefly introduced us to Stella.
Mm.
And here we are again. So
So I've brought out a few of my stoles. I wondered if you'd like to talk about the process of how a stole comes to be.
I would love to hear that. The design process, like how do you think about how do you create a new stole, and when does a new design appear
Hmm.
in your lineup?
Yeah, so the work is seasonal. I try to stay several seasons ahead of the church year calendar. So right now I should be working on Christmas. Um, it works out better some years than others. And yeah, but the process involves first of a design. Sometimes the designs just live in my head. And then they go right to fabric. Other times it's just a good old fashioned paper and pencil sketch. I keep sketchbooks and journals. Sometimes they're just words. Sometimes they're actually pictures. if you were to commission a stole, a one-of-a-kind stole, because that's part of the work that I do, I keep things in stock on the website in limited editions, meaning that there are small batches of that design, or I do one-of-a-kind work also. And in that case, I sketch on an iPad, it's digital, and the client receives a drawing that looks something like this. And then we go back and forth in the process until all parties are feeling that it's the right direction to go. And then we pull fabrics. I try to keep fabrics in stock so I'm not just constantly running out or waiting for a shipment to come, because that wouldn't be efficient. And it's fun to have fabric in the studio. and so then patterns are made for symbols that are maybe new to the design process, or I keep patterns from previous projects also and reuse those for the symbols, and they are appliqued. Sometimes a stole doesn't have anything but pieced fabrics. This stole speaks very well for ordinary time, like we've talked about already. It's the color speaks and makes the visual connection. But other times there are images or symbols on the stole, like this Advent stole, where the piece dove, the dove was cut out in the white fabric and then it's appliqued or sewn on to the purple background. And so then the stole's completed, the sewing is completed, the pressing is completed, the photography is completed, and then to finish the story is to write the story. And the stoles on the website always have a story that goes within the description. It might be about the fabric, it might be about the colors, it might be about the symbols or the inspiration behind the stole. And that's really important to what I do. I think that's my teaching background coming out. I really believe I'm still an educator in the work that I do. And that goes into the marketing and the monthly newsletter that is sent out also.
All right. So yeah. It looks like there's one more stole peeking underneath the Advent. Wow.
I pulled out this white. This is an example of something that might be for someone doing ministry in unusual situations or unique situations outside of a church. It doesn't have a cross on it. It might be a hospital chaplain stole. It's in our peace and healing category. Wow. And the colors are peaceful, and the imagery of growth and renewal speak well to that. I've sold this to wedding officiants also.
Oh yeah, no, that's
so
beautiful.
something for everyone. We totally recognize that ministry is done in many, many different ways.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for giving us a tour of your studio this morning and a peek behind your design process. We really, this has been fascinating. So
good. I hope it encourages people in ministry to think well about what they are wearing and that the purpose, there is definite purpose behind that, the wearing, stoling up.
Yes, absolutely. So is there anything else you want to share with us?
I'm just wondering if I have one more space in the studio that I haven't shown you. I'm wondering if we would like to do that in the next segment.
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. Thank you for your time this morning, and join us for the final installment of our interview with Jenny Gallo of Carrot Top Studio.